This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here with your latest Meteo Mundo forecast for this Monday, October the 30th. I hope you're having a great start to the week. There is still a ton to get into and the potential for some, again, impacts across portions of the Caribbean and the Bahamas with the weather for the week ahead. We have two areas of disturbances to talk about. The one in the Caribbean getting to a higher chance of development over the next 5 days. Regardless of development, it's going to bring some heavier rain through the Caribbean. We still have Invest 96L just east of the Northwest Bahamas, and heavier rain continues to fall for portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And that's where we'll start this video. We'll get into the disturbances here coming up, but I want to talk about what's happening here and now on this Monday. And that moisture axis continues to sit right over the eastern sides of Puerto Rico and the entire Virgin Islands. Heavy rain continues to fall in these areas, including Road Town and the British Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John. For the U.S. Virgin Islands, the eastern coastline of Puerto Rico near Fajardo, and then the islands just off to the east, Culebra and Esperanza. Now, this moisture axis is going to start to move off towards the west. So this will be the last afternoon of heavy rain. But if you live in the central and the western sides of Puerto Rico, that means your rain should be picking up as we go through the remainder of Monday afternoon and into Monday evening. But again, it's very elongated north and south. You get as far east now as the rest of the Leeward Islands and the rest of the Lesser Antilles overall, and the rain chances are just going to be lower. We'll get some scattered showers developing in these areas, especially down towards Trinidad and Tobago, but as far as the heavy rain flood potential threat, that's now moving off towards the east. And thankfully, this will be a progressive pattern. We're going to start to pick up some movement with this rain and get it out of these areas. So let's zoom into those areas right now. I'll show you the rainfall here over the next 5 days in the GFS model, and it's really about the next 24 hours. We'll begin to dry out later in the day tomorrow, but you can see that heavy rain falling the remainder of this Monday into at least early on Tuesday in some areas across the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, but we'll begin to see that moisture move off towards the west. And again, we need to dry out here, and we're finally doing so. So at least that heavy rain is not going to be sitting over those areas. Now, as I mentioned, for the remainder of the Lesser Antilles, from Anguilla back down towards Antigua, scattered rain, but nothing that's going to be prominent here. We'll get a little bit more in the way of some showers coming back later in the week. You notice as you go farther south towards Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago, we're seeing a little bit higher rain chances kind of in those afternoon hours. So a little bit more rain chances there, even up towards Barbados, compared to the other areas of the Windward and the Leeward Islands. Now, as we go farther west, okay, let's move on over towards the Dominican Republic right now, because for you guys and Haiti on the island of Hispaniola, obviously that moisture is headed your way. So everything's moving east to west. This is all part of that larger disturbance, okay? And we'll talk more about what might be happening with that coming up. And again, you can see that rain beginning to flare up for places like Santo Domingo and Port-au-Prince. But again, because there's going to be some east to west movement with this, we're not going to be sitting over the island heavy rain for days and days and days like we saw in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, which means although the rain chances will be going up, I'm not as concerned about flood threats, despite the fact, of course, there's some very high elevation along Hispaniola. Excuse me. So for Port-au-Prince and Santo Domingo, certainly the opportunity for some rain. Rain chances going up tomorrow and into Wednesday. They'll begin to fade Thursday and Friday as that moisture continues to drive off towards the west. For our friends in the ABC Islands here, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, your rain chances really go up. We'll start to see that move in tomorrow, and then I expect it to be very wet the remainder of Tuesday, Wednesday, and more than likely through the majority of Thursday before you start to see some drier weather on Friday. And you can just see on the model how much moisture there is in play. And that's part of this disturbance. Again, regardless of if this thing wraps up into a tropical system, it is just going to be taking a huge moisture plume and moving it through the rest of the Caribbean as we go through the remainder of the rest of the week. So I'm going to zoom back out here, and then we're going to take a look at the rainfall chances. And as we do so, thank you so much for liking this video, friends. I appreciate that. And also, if you want to drop a comment, if you need a specific question answered about the forecast, or you want to let me know what's been happening in your area, I certainly appreciate that as well. So I want to switch over here to the total precipitation product of the GFS model. I'm going to let this loop over the same time frame, and then we'll look at some of the areas that could be getting some heavier rain. But from this this broad perspective here over the next 5 days, you can just see how much moisture is going to be moving through. Now, eventually, of course, it's going to get to Jamaica. It's going to get to the Cayman Islands, Central America, and Mexico, especially up towards Cancun and the Yucatan Peninsula. And I'll highlight all those areas coming up. But let's go into the areas that I had already mentioned here. So again, for our friends in the British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, the majority of this rain falls over the next 24 to at most 36 hours. Will then begin to dry out after that. But you're still looking at the opportunity here for another 2 inches of rain, St. Croix, maybe the eastern sides of Puerto Rico, potentially up to 3 more inches over the next 5 days. But again, the majority of this falling in a very short order. Road Town right now about 1.5 to 2 more inches. St. John 2 inches. St. Thomas right around 2. So again, heavy rainfall, and this does shift off towards the east eventually as well. Now, as we get into the rest of the Leeward Islands, you notice that there'll be some rain, but those totals aren't as concerning. I'm not really as concerned about the heavier rain there. You get back down towards Trinidad and Tobago, as I mentioned, a little bit higher in the way of some rain there. Looks like maybe the southern sides of Trinidad, maybe close to 2 inches of rain. Tobago, a little bit less than that. On over towards Grenada here, about 1 inch of rain. So we're progressing all of this towards the west. But as we do so, now we get to the ABC Islands, and there's going to be pockets of some heavier rain. I just want you to notice that on the GFS model, we've got a bullseye of like 14 inches of rain just north of the ABC Islands. Now, again, that might be overdoing it a bit, but it just shows you how moisture laden the atmosphere is going to be for the week ahead. And I do expect several inches of rain to fall in the ABC Islands Tuesday through Thursday, drying up after that. But pockets of heavier rain and tropical downpours abound, that is for sure. Now, for the island of Hispaniola, again, you can see rain totals there aren't going to be nearly as significant as what we had in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, but the opportunity to pick up a couple of inches of rain, let's say 1 to 3 overall, as we go through again tomorrow, Wednesday, and early on Thursday, as this entire system progresses off towards the west. Okay, let's get back into kind of what's going to be happening with this thing for the remainder of the week. I'm going to go into a wider mode here again. We'll throw this into motion over the next 5 days and then talk about the progression of this potential disturbance. The Hurricane Center has it as a 50% chance of development, okay? And you can see on the GFS model, as we get to Central America, the opportunity that this wraps up to a stronger storm right before it moves into that area. Now, again, there's going to be a lot of discrepancy in the models beyond 5 days. Generally speaking, they're going to try and ride it north through the remainder of Central America and towards the Yucatan Peninsula. And I'll show you the GFS model a little bit farther out in time here coming up in just a second. But again, just look at all of the moisture that it's going to be pulling in. So for our friends in Jamaica, we'll zoom in for our friends in Jamaica. Again, your rain chances going up starting sometime late tomorrow, but especially Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You might stay just north of the heaviest axis of moisture, so it might be more scattered downpours rather than just overcast skies and rain after rain shower after rain shower, but certainly your rain chances improving. And it's the same thing for our friends in the Cayman Islands as well. Georgetown, the West End area, again, not persistent rain. You're probably just north of that highest moisture axis, but certainly seeing the rain moving in, at least in a scattered variety. And oh, by the way, it's going to be humid as all get out as well. Let's take a look at the wind profile from this as well. Again, we'll get a good idea about the GFS model and it trying to wrap up this system a little bit here as well. So let me try and switch over to the wind gust product real quick, throw that into motion. And again, you're going to see a pretty defined center of circulation that gets stronger as it moves towards places like Honduras and Nicaragua, and then eventually up towards the north, El Salvador, and into the southern sides of Mexico. Of course, Belize and Guatemala would be included in this as well. And by the way, just all of Central America is going to be wet. You actually have a Pacific storm just off the coast right now, finally moving away. But again, on the GFS model, you can see that it's a pretty far south track over the next 5 days as it wraps up the system, and then I'll extend it out after that. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what it's looking at over the next 5 days. We'll take it out over the next 10 days, and then we'll talk about how that could impact portions of Mexico as well. So let's see here. I'll take it out. We'll go out to the 9th. So I'm going to put this into motion. It's going to take a little bit of a second to load, but you'll start to see the trend on the GFS model. And that trend will basically be to move through some pretty high terrain in the northern sides of Central America, which could actually rip apart this storm a bit, and then into the Yucatan. So again, clear to see. Notice how we almost lose that center of circulation as it's over land so often or for such a prolonged time, and then swinging back north and east. That is the general trend of the GFS model. But friends, again, I look for consistency in these models before I really start talking about prolonged period out beyond 5 days. We're getting a little bit more in that right now, but the GFS model still wobbles back and forth. And again, at this point in time, this would be a very heavy rainmaker for Central America and then the Yucatan, and then be a much weaker system as it tries to move to the north and to the east towards the Straits of Florida and southern Florida. Again, that's based off of the GFS model. Let me go back over to the reflectivity product here, and we'll take a look at that over the same time frame. And you'll clearly see, again, as it moves into Central America here, I'm going to get down a little bit lower, and I'll take myself off camera as a matter of fact. And you can just see that. Again, we'll have that moisture ride through, and then it becomes much more of a diffuse system. It doesn't really reorganize once it gets past the Yucatan Peninsula here. Now, I've had several people in comments ask me about Cancun. So let me say this, as we get into, if you're looking at the GFS model, as we get into the 5th, we have the opportunity for that rain to move into the Yucatan Peninsula here. I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see that. Now, I expect this to be a progressive system. And what I mean is it's not going to be sitting over one area for long, but we could have a few days of rain across the Yucatan and associated with this, again, simply based on the GFS model. Now, the GFS model has a fairly weak system moving through the Yucatan. Obviously, if it recurves quicker, faster, and stays over open water, that could be a stronger storm headed towards the Yucatan as we go about 7 to 10 days out, more than likely in that 6 to 7 day time frame. So again, it's up to you. I'm not going to say, hey, cancel these plans, especially if we, aren't for certain that we see a hurricane coming that way. But if you do have some plans to go to the Yucatan and Cancun specifically, certainly this next weekend ahead, it could be wet, but hopefully clearing up after that. I'll keep you updated. Again, we're still about 7 days out from any of that impacting the Yucatan, but I've just had a lot of questions in the chat, so I wanted to answer that. Okay. I want to also show you the NAM model real quickly, and we'll look at the European model as well. And the reason why is because, again, as I said, I'm looking for consistency in these models, not just model run to run, but other models agreeing with themselves, if you will, the NAM agreeing with the GFS, with the Euro and the other tropical models that I look at. And you can see on the NAM model, it's a little bit more ill-defined, but again, look at all of this moisture coming through the remainder of the Caribbean. It's going to be wet regardless. And again, high sea surface temperatures, low wind shear, everything looks favorable for development as we get into portions of the latter half of the week. All right. I want to show you the GFS model plots of this as well. So I'm going to put this into motion. And again, this is the members of the European ensemble model. And you will see that a lot of them cluster. Look at those lows developing. Now, they're not extremely strong. These would be tropical depression strength, maybe low-end tropical storm at best. But again, centered right towards Honduras. And then moving up towards the north and to the west there as we get into the Yucatan. And again, that would be what the European model is doing. But I just wanted to show you that 5 days out, the GFS model, the European model, and the NAM model are all in pretty good agreement with spinning up a storm in the far western sides of the Caribbean. And that, my friends, will be the big story that we'll be watching for the remainder of the week ahead. All right. So we've talked about that system. Still have to certainly mention what's happening east of the Bahamas. And as we do so, again, thank you very much for liking the video. If you want the latest forecast from us as well, make sure that you subscribe. I've got my rundown here. Just want to make sure I cover everything. So let's move into that area. Going to start off, well, let me just zoom in here real quickly, as a matter of fact, and just show you kind of, again, that this looks very, very weak on satellite imagery. It never developed to a depression or a storm. It's still just an invest. Don't expect it to become a storm. When I show you the water vapor imagery, basically outside of the storms that have developed near the center of circulation, this is running into a lot of dry air. It's also going to move fairly quickly off to the north and to the east. You can see the models basically bring that in. Now, it's going to make a close approach to places like Eleuthera and Abaco and Grand Bahama and Walker's Key. It's going to certainly kick up the sea conditions, and we're going to get some very breezy winds out of this as well. But again, as far as actual seeing a system in that area, no, I don't expect that. So let's get into this area for you here. Let me swing over to the northern sides of the area here. We'll move back over this way. Here we go. All right, now I want to show you the HRR model. It is a very high resolution model here, so give me a second. I want to fire that up because you're going to see a very loose system, but it's also one that's going to kick up the winds as well. So as this goes into motion, you can see that spin. Look at that twist moving away. We're going to have strong east to northeast winds in places like Eleuthera and Abaco and New Providence and Andros and Grand Bahama and Bimini and Walker's Key over the next 24 to 36 hours. The winds will start east-northeast. By tonight, they'll turn northwest, and by tomorrow, we'll actually pull in a westerly wind behind this system and pull in a few showers even from the peninsula of Florida. Now, look, this is not going to be rain that adds up to much. It's going to stay very breezy most of the week as well, but quick passing downpours with that moisture in play, certainly a probability. And the interesting thing is here, when you get into the southern sides of the island chain, we're actually going to have a higher chance for more significant downpours as we pull in a stronger southwest wind with just more available moisture, and that would include portions of the Turks and Caicos as well. So more concentrated rain actually in the southeast side of the Bahamas, scattered rain for the central Bahamas, and then very breezy conditions for the northwest Bahamas. As a matter of fact, looking at those wind gusts, again, nothing on the HRR model wraps anything up. You can see that broad circulation, but if the greens are actually wind gusts over 20 knots, that's pretty significant. Obviously, the sea conditions for you boaters are going to be churned up for a bit here as well. But just even along the islands, it's going to be very windy for the next several days. So, but again, as far as this actually wrapping up into a system, no, I don't expect that to be happening here as it moves off to the north and to the east. Okay, so as we wrap up the video for today, again, we'll kind of go over the highlights for us here. For Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, we continue to see that scattered rain moving off towards the west, a high-end development with portions of the Caribbean getting a lot of rain over the next several days. The ABC Islands included in that. We have our disturbance up to the north and to the east. I do want to show you one more time again on the European model that it agrees with the other models of development in the far western Caribbean over the next 4 to 5 days. We'll end this with a couple of 5-day forecasts for my friends in Grand Bahama. Again, it is about the breeze out there the next several days. Scattered rain. It's not going to be a lot as far as in the rain gauge, but you'll have a chance for some showers. And even once the rain dissipates Wednesday and Thursday, I expect breezy conditions to continue, and then more passing showers on Friday. Look at Thursday's high of just 79 degrees. For my friends in Kingston and Jamaica, scattered showers the next couple of days as that moisture moves your way, a better opportunity for showers and a few storms and heavier rainfall, especially Wednesday and Thursday, maybe on Friday as well. It will all depend on what happens with that disturbance and how far south it tracks. But regardless, I do expect more moisture in your area, helping to up that rain chance. Again, friends, we also live stream here at Meteo Mundo with the latest conditions. Look for that in the live tab. I'll have the latest forecast coming up. Again, thank you for liking and subscribing. If you want that latest information about all that's happening across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, thank you so much. We'll see you next time right here at Meteo Mundo.